In the summer of 1971, a researcher from MIT visited a village in southern Iran and took temperature readings inside a mud brick house, while the air outside hit 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, 72 degrees, no electricity, no compressor, no refrigerant, not even a fan. The house had been built that way for 3,000 years. The family living there paid nothing to cool it. They had never paid anything. The system that kept it comfortable was built into the walls, and it was still working. That researcher published his findings. The data was solid, the physics was not controversial, and then, as far as American construction was concerned, it completely disappeared. Today, the US residential HVAC industry is worth $25 billion a year. The average American household spends $1,100 annually on heating and cooling. And the house that costs nothing, the one that worked in 110 degrees Fahrenheit heat without a single moving part, is essentially illegal to build in most US jurisdictions. This is the story of the windcatcher, and of why a technology that kept entire civilizations comfortable for 3,000 years could not survive a single century of American building code. The windcatcher, called a malqaf in Arabic, a badgir in Persian, is not a curiosity. It is one of the most documented passive cooling systems in architectural history. The oldest physical evidence dates to Egypt, around 1300 BCE. Paintings in the tomb of Nabaman show houses with angled roof scoops oriented toward the north, the direction of the prevailing cool wind in the Nile Delta. These were not decorations. Archaeologists confirmed they were functional ventilation structures, pulling air down through the building and across water vessels to cool the interior. In Persia, modern Iran, the badgir became architecturally sophisticated. The city of Yazd on the central Iranian plateau, where summer temperatures routinely exceed 104 degrees Fahrenheit, is still filled with them. Wind towers rise 4, 5, even 6 stories tall. Some structures have towers on multiple sides to catch wind from any direction. Inside, the towers connect to underground channels called qanats, water-cooled tunnels that chill the incoming air before it reaches the living space. This is not speculative. Iranian engineers tested this. A badgir and qanat combination measured in the city of Kerman showed interior temperatures of 71 to 74 degrees Fahrenheit on days when the outside air exceeded 108 degrees Fahrenheit. 59 of those towers in Yazd are still in active use today. The system moved. It appeared in North Africa, in medieval Spain, in the wind towers of old Dubai. Traders carried the concept through the Arab world and into the Indian subcontinent. Everywhere warm climate civilizations built permanently, they built this. Then came the 20th century and a machine that could do the same thing without requiring an architect who understood airflow. Willis Carrier patented mechanical AIR conditioning in 1902. By the 1950s, the technology was being mass-produced for residential use. By the 1960s, it had become the default. This is where the story stops being about innovation and starts being about lock-in. The American building code infrastructure, primarily the International Residential Code maintained by the International Code Council, was built around mechanical systems. Duct sizing, load calculations, HVAC unit specifications. The entire compliance pathway assumes a compressor-based system. There is no code pathway for a windcatcher. There is no recognized performance standard for passive cooling towers. There is no approved testing methodology that would let a building inspector sign off on one. This is not neutral. The International Code Council is a private non-profit. Its code development committees are populated by industry representatives, including consistently manufacturers of mechanical HVAC equipment and the trade associations that represent them. The 2024 ICC process for the residential code included participation from the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute, an industry group whose members collectively generate $60 billion in annual revenue. They do not write the code to block windcatchers specifically, they do not have to. They write the code around the systems they sell. Everything else becomes, by default, non-compliant. In 2023, a homeowner in Arizona who wanted to build a passive cooling tower was told by their county building department that there was no permit pathway for the structure. Not that it was dangerous, not that it would not work, just that the forms for it did not exist. ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, is the organization most directly responsible for codifying mechanical heating and cooling as the American standard. ASHRAE publishes the energy standards that most US building codes adopt by reference. Standard 90.1, the baseline energy efficiency standard for commercial buildings, defines compliance almost entirely in terms of mechanical system performance metrics. ASHRAE. Standard 62.2 for residential ventilation sets minimum air exchange rates that are nearly impossible to meet without mechanical ventilation systems in a modern airtight house. ASHRAE is not a government agency. It is an industry professional society. Its operating budget comes from membership dues, publications, and corporate partnerships. Its board includes executives from Carrier, Trane, Lennox, and Johnson Controls, the four largest HVAC manufacturers in North America, who between them hold roughly 60% of the US residential market. This is not a conspiracy. It is just a committee that writes technical standards for the technology its members sell. The result is a regulatory ecosystem that treats a 3,000-year-old proven technology as if it does not exist, because nobody on the committee has any financial reason to acknowledge it. Hassan Fathy was an Egyptian architect. He spent most of his professional life trying to answer one question: why are we making poor people build expensive houses when there is a better, cheaper, older way? Fathy spent decades studying traditional Nubian and Egyptian vernacular architecture. He documented the malqaf in technical detail. He tested wind scoop performance. He designed and built entire villages in Egypt using passive cooling principles, including earthen walls, internal courtyards, and wind towers that kept interior temperatures comfortable without any mechanical system. His 1969 book, Architecture for the Poor, was translated into multiple languages and became one of the most read works of architectural theory in the developing world. In it, Fathy made a clear and documented case. A properly designed wind scoop system in a hot, dry climate can maintain interior temperatures 25 to 35 degrees Fahrenheit below the outside air, with no operating cost, no maintenance beyond occasional cleaning, and no mechanical components to fail. The architectural establishment in the West noticed. He was awarded the Aga Khan Award for Architecture in 1980. He received an honorary degree from the University of New Mexico. He died in 1989. The American building industry went on exactly as before. What Fathy built still stands. Some of the houses in his experimental village of New Gorna, built in the 1940s, are still occupied. Still cool, still requiring nothing. Stand in the main room of a badgir house in Yazd at 2 in the afternoon in July. Outside, the stone pavement is hot enough to burn through shoe leather. The air shimmers. There is no shade. A thermometer in the street reads 108 degrees. You step through the door. The floor is cool under your feet. Thick mud brick, 2 feet of it, that has been absorbing cool night air for centuries. The walls are pale and slightly rough. There is a faint moving sound above you, air moving through the tower shaft, pulled down by the pressure differential between the hot rooftop and the cooler interior. The air that reaches you has passed through a narrow underground channel where a thin stream of water runs. It arrives damp and 10 degrees cooler than the outside air at maybe 78 degrees, and it moves, not much, just enough that you feel it. The effect is simple and reliable, a passive flow you can sense. You are not uncomfortable, you are not struggling, you are simply inside on a 108-degree day, without electricity, without refrigerant, without a monthly bill. The house is working. It has been working like this for 300 years. The family that lives here has never replaced a compressor. They have never called a technician. The maintenance cost per year is about 40 minutes with a broom. That is it. That is the whole system. The obvious question is why this doesn't exist in Phoenix, in Las Vegas, in Tucson, cities where summer temperatures routinely match the Iranian plateau, and where residential electricity bills run $300 to $400 a month in July? The answer has three parts. First, it requires design. A windcatcher is not a product you order. It has to be oriented correctly to the prevailing wind, sized to the floor area it serves, and integrated into the wall system during construction. It cannot be retrofitted to a house built on a standard American framing plan. The American construction industry is built on standardized, replicable systems that work the same way regardless of site orientation or local climate. Passive cooling requires the opposite, site-specific design that an architect has to actually think about. Second, it requires density and permanence. Wind towers in Yazd work partly because the city was built as a thermal system. Narrow streets cast shade on each other. Courtyard walls block solar gain. The entire urban fabric contributes to cooling. American suburban development, including wide roads, isolated structures, and no shade coordination, dismantles the conditions that make passive cooling most effective. Third, there is no financial incentive in the supply chain to change this. A contractor who builds you a passive cooling house makes money once, on construction. A contractor who installs a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system sells you the equipment, the installation, the maintenance contract, the replacement parts, and eventually the replacement unit. The passive house is a better product for the homeowner. It is a worse business model for everyone else in the transaction. The house that stays 72 degrees in July without a power bill is not a fantasy. It is not a prototype. It is not waiting for better technology. It has existed, tested, and documented for 3,000 years. It is standing right now in Yazd and Cairo and Dubai and 100 other places where the same sun beats down and the same physics applies. What it is, in America, is inconvenient. Inconvenient for the code writers, inconvenient for the equipment manufacturers, inconvenient for a construction industry that built its entire business model around selling you a machine instead of designing you a building. That's the pattern we keep finding. Not a ban issued by a villain in a boardroom, just a system so thoroughly optimized for selling mechanical solutions that anything which doesn't need to be sold falls through the cracks and stays there. The malqaf doesn't have a lobby, it doesn't have a trade association, nobody is paying to get it into the next revision of the residential code. The only people with an interest in changing that are the people who would live in those houses and stop paying those bills. If you are building or planning to build, the resources exist. Fathy's work is in print. The engineering data from Iranian and Egyptian field studies is publicly available. And in a growing number of jurisdictions, the owner-builder exemption still applies. Next episode, we're looking at a material that grows in 6 weeks, insulates better than fiberglass, costs almost nothing to produce, and is still essentially banned for residential construction in most of the United States. You already know the shape of this story. Subscribe, it keeps coming.